It does a half hour before for sign-in purpose.
All right, you're good to proceed. Unmute yourselves.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. It's now 2 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order and let the record reflect that all members are participating. The next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. I don't have them ready, and Donna, thank you for sending those pieces of it, but don't have it together quite yet. So we'll work on that for the next meeting. We do have correspondence from an email with a support document received June 6th from Jeffrey and Suzanne Goode on 1 Grove Street concerning curbing on Columbia Avenue. I think I sent everybody that email and the support document, so you have that, and I'm sure you've reviewed it, which will be on the agenda. We'll take that up in the first item under new business. Now, under old business, we have discussed the possibility of inviting DelDOT to an upcoming Streets and Transportation Committee meeting to discuss additional crosswalks on Rehoboth Avenue. So, you know, there's some crosswalks lacking between basically the corner of 4th all the way up to 5th, essentially. So that area in between where I see people crossing all the time, is between Dogfish and Love's Liquor and that area.
Starbucks.
Starbucks. There's tons of people always crossing there, and we don't have, there's an enormous length of sidewalk between the 2 points. And, you know, I don't know. Anybody have thoughts about?
We discussed it in the past. That median there is a no man's land, no person's land, where every time someone crosses Rehoboth Avenue to get there, they're jaywalking because there are no crosswalks to get them to that median island.
Yeah.
So, and it is, I believe it's my memory is vague in terms of whether it's a state law. I believe it's a state law. So ideally, we'd have access to that median island in at least one place, if not 2. And the busier end is Dogfish, Starbucks, Love's Liquors, Grub, that 4th Street right there where you used to be able to turn. Then the streetscape changed, and it's an awkward intersection between Lake, 4th, etc.
It is definitely awkward. I know this is coming back even when you know, not 8 or 9 years ago, this was an issue that we talked about. We never actually did invite DelDOT to ask them to do something about it, because at the time, it was all about the city putting in money to do the crosswalk, the curb cuts, and all of that kind of thing. So I don't know, Chief, do you want to weigh in on this in terms of whether we should? I mean, I find that whole intersection dangerous for pedestrians, and particularly. You're muted, Chief.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you. I apologize, I came in a little late, so I'm not sure what the question actually was, so I do apologize.
Okay, so the question is, we do believe that there needs to be some crosswalk in the area of Dogfish, the Love's Liquor, Starbucks, that area, because people always jaywalk there because this amount of distance between one crosswalk and the other, basically 4th to 5th is very, you know, it's huge.
Right.
So.
Okay, well, I would agree. We're getting busier down in that area of town, and people are just parking and crossing the street more. So basically jaywalking. I can do a study. We've had no accidents as far as pedestrians or anything like that, but people are definitely just running across the street. So it probably would not be a bad idea, but I kind of do a quick survey myself and report back to this committee or to DelDOT if you would like.
Well, and I would like, if you can, and I don't know how often you do this, but if you could contact DelDOT in advance, because one of the things that, I think we need to consider is there's going to be a fair amount of dollars from the American Rescue Plan. And if we have some sort of a design that's quote unquote shovel ready, then I mean, we would probably want, obviously DelDOT would be doing the design because it's theirs.
Yeah.
So I do think it's an issue, and I think they should be contacted. I mean, I appreciate you wanting to do the study, but I think if you do that and contact them or with them, I think that would be a good way to move forward.
Okay, I will talk to the city manager to make sure things okay, and for me to reach out to them. I'll work with Kevin Williams next week and see if we can't set up a meeting in the near future and discuss a possible crosswalk between 4th and 5th. Where would it go? And get the state's input and see if they're willing to put something together.
That would be wonderful. And if at all possible, it would be great to have something between now and our next meeting, and then invite, and if they are interested, to invite them to our next meeting.
Yes. Okay. I will try to find out.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Donna. You're muted. You're muted.
Okay. Speaking of DelDOT, who would you contact at DelDOT? Who's the contact person when we're concerned about things on Rehoboth Avenue? Who is that, and how do you reach them?
Well,
there's different departments. It depends if you're doing studies, if you're looking at when you're doing design phases and all that. So I'd have to look in my Rolodex here, what old saying Rolodex, but I'd have to get the names. But there's several people we contact depending on what exactly we're looking for.
Okay.
but Donna, one of the things that if I may, just sorry to interrupt, but it's always the commissioners or any committee members really shouldn't be contacting DelDOT. We really depend on staff to do that, either the chief or the city manager or Kevin Williams. So just so you.
Okay, well, the letter we decided to send to the commissioners, we were going to also send it to DelDOT to just alert them about our concerns about the pedestrian problem, safety at the circle. And I just want to send it to somebody at DelDOT, and it's hard to get any addresses there. So if people could forward me some of those addresses just to send along that letter to the people at DelDOT.
So the letter that you assembled.
Right. That
has that been sent to all the members?
It's all ready to go. Yes, our members, right. It hasn't gone to the commissioners yet, but that's holding it up is getting some contact people at DelDOT that would be appropriate to just alert them to the issues.
So what we should do, though, is really that memo should come from the city commissioners or from that.
It needs to go to the commissioners first, Donna.
Okay, well, I think it's okay if that's the way you want to do it, but here we're a committee, we just want to share some information on up to the people, to DelDOT about our streets, I don't know why that really couldn't be just automatically copied or sent to them. Just as a public concern, we're it just seems cumbersome.
Yeah, because we are a city endorsed committee, if you will, we can't speak necessarily for the city now as a public,
Well, we're not speaking for the city. We're just sort of speaking for the residents or public here. I think we're kind of
right, but we represent the city, so we can't do that without the okay of the commissioners.
Okay.
I mean, you can do it personally, but we can't do it as a committee without it. We want the city commissioners to support us. We want the staff to support us. So,
Well, okay, and I think all the more reason we should have DelDOT come to a meeting. That would be
Right.
good because we've had various issues. So I think it'd be good to be able to coordinate with them. And all the more reason to invite them to a committee meeting.
this letter was done, David, when you were, I'm just not remembering this letter. I'm sorry.
The letter that Donna's speaking to was last month's meeting after you and Susan recused yourselves.
Right.
So
Okay.
it just deals with the traffic circle, the changes in dynamics that we expect to occur when clear space is fully operational.
Okay, well, if that is the case, then we really need to wait till after the commissioners make a decision on June 30th regarding clear space.
Yes. So it's ready to go when the timing is correct.
Okay, so
And it's on behalf of Donna, the two Johns, and myself.
okay. So, but we need to wait until we actually know what's going to happen on clear space.
Yes, that was part of what we discussed, is that it's easy for us to speculate, but we don't know what the situation is going to be like once we get to that point.
That's right. So Donna, I think what we're going to do is we're going to try to move forward with this one crosswalk issue first, because that's, a definite thing we want to address. And then we'll also talk to them. It's going to be a bigger project because the circle is a major, it's the income, the rotary is coming into town, and it's the traffic there going every which way is going to be important. We need to involve them how we can. So
And I think the objective of going to additional crosswalks is appropriate, because the more I've spent time visiting other places and looking at crosswalks, we on Rehoboth Avenue have relatively few compared to other places I've been. There are many more in jurisdictions, far more frequent on roads that don't have anywhere near as much traffic as the avenue does. We could definitely stand to have more.
okay. Well,
Particularly like the checkerboard one that I sent to Donna from Watkins Glen, which is very visible.
Oh, I know that town. Great town.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
yeah, the chief is going to go ahead and start chatting with them about that, and hopefully they'll have some interest, and we'll come to our next meeting regarding that specific crosswalk. So.
Yeah, and then again, we have the same situation further up the avenue, closer to the ocean. So if we start there could be other cases where we could make access to the medians safer, and in sequence with the traffic lights, perhaps.
Okay. Anyone else? Comments? Questions?
David, who did you say you sent that information on Watkins Glen to?
Oh, I sent it to Donna as an FYI, because I know she wants more visible crosswalks.
If you've got it, I'd love to see it, because I can't remember
No
now.
problem.
Yeah.
What they've done there is double posts on each sign,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
so
yeah.
that the posts are far more visible. But I'll send that out to everybody, and you can all take a look at it.
Yeah, it was a very good.
I've noticed that some crosswalks have the strobes high, some strobes are low, some are going with double strobes above and below the signs. There are a lot of different ways that it's being approached. Most of them that I've seen now are solar powered.
Mhm,
That's gaining in popularity.
mhm. Oh, yeah.
And then ultimately, again, I fall back on the hopefully uplights in the pavement one day.
Mhm.
All right, let's move on to now the new business. Has everyone reviewed the letter from Suzanne and Jeffrey Goode, and also looked at the survey that they put together?
Yes.
Questions, comments, thoughts? Anyone?
Well, as you stated at the last meeting, I think to put curbing in there would be a long-term project and require considerable expense and would probably delay this till the next fiscal year. So I drove by the storage yard looking at other options. Number one would be, are there any leftover quote suburban propane unquote barriers that could be put in place there? Or it appears as though we have a significant inventory of benches, boardwalk benches that could be placed there. Or we have a lot of nice blue trash cans that could be placed there, or even bike racks that could be placed there as a short-term solution that wouldn't involve a lot of expense, would be pretty easy to accomplish.
Anyone else?
I thought the most compelling thing was that there's a fire hydrant at that corner. And that needs to, be freed of anyone parking around it. And my thought was, and Mark, I think we should just endorse this and pass it on to DelDOT that would make the final decision. I think they're
Let me tell you my thoughts on this is that I know it's an issue up there, but I think in order to what's being proposed, I think, I'll ask, I've got a few questions for Jeffrey, but I'm thinking that what would be the wisest thing if DelDOT is interested is to take the to install a curb from Grove Street down to Felton. So it would be that block on that side. So it would be the curbs with the curb cuts, et cetera. Which would be, something that either the city would have to fund or DelDOT would have to fund. But since it's DelDOT Street, I would hope that they would want to do that. That's one solution. Anybody have any other thoughts about that?
Well,
I think
you're muted, John.
the presenting issue has as much to do with parking as it does with safety issues. And I agree that a curb is probably a good long-term solution to look at cost and who's got the proper, it looks like it's a DelDOT issue because it's Columbia Street. The problem that I'm trying to work my head around is how, even with the curb there, that's going to change the parking situation. Because there's an attractive nuisance at Royal Farm. People are going to just leave their car where they want to leave the car and go into the store. I've got an attractive nuisance a few doors down with Lingo. People want to go pick up their keys. They leave their cars where they want to pick the keys. It doesn't matter if it's pulling the car up into my driveway or parking cars all over the place on the medians. So a tourist is going to do what a tourist wants to do. And I would like us to continue to discuss how we would either enforce parking around that area better or prevent parking around that area better.
Well, I think, John, if there were a curb there to protect the fire hydrant and the curb is painted yellow, I think people respect fire hydrants. So I think that would pretty much cover that corner. And it wouldn't be so expensive as far as running it down a whole block or anything. But I think people would respect a yellow curb for fire hydrants.
Yeah.
And
when I was reading the report, I thought they said that the city had already painted it yellow there and nobody was paying any attention.
it's
So I
just
don't know how a
painted on
curb will help.
Well, John, it's just yellow paint on the street. It's just
Yeah.
yellow paint on the ground. And it's sort of like, okay, what's this yellow paint on the ground? I would think if you had a substantial curb and it's bright yellow and right around the fire hydrant, people get it.
And I'll weigh in again, and maybe my viewpoint is different because I live in a very high traffic neighborhood. People do not pay attention to yellow curbs. They don't pay attention to yellow stripes on driveways. They don't pay attention to yellow stripes around green space if there's something that they want to go do. They just ignore it. I'm not arguing against a curb. I think a curb is a good idea. I'm not quite sure exactly where it gets placed, what's the most effective and efficient way to do it. And yeah, absolutely, it should be there. And yes, it should be painted yellow. That's not going to be the end game. There are other issues to be addressed in addition to the curb.
Right. Well, and the other thing in that area are 2 stormwater drains. So that's another thing that DelDOT would have to work out with the curbing in that. But yeah. Well, you get a bigger ticket if you park near a fire hydrant.
So there's an opportunity for some revenue generation there.
Right.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, if there aren't any other comments, we'll let Jeffrey, you want to give your comments or questions? Can you hear us? Are you there?
Hear me?
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, you hear me? Great. Thank you. Yes, I would love to give some comments. Maybe I could give a little bit of background, a short background, to explain, well, the house that we live in, as about 2-3 others around there or more, is a new house, and the city has helped us. When we first moved there was absolutely no barrier between the grass that the contractor put down and the road. And it was it was really bad. We had trucks parked, not just on the city side, but on really close to my house. It was a madhouse. And Kevin Williams worked with me, and we put two parking spots in with gravel or stones, as you call it. And that has helped mitigate, at least the cars that parked there aren't parked. And then I put a fence up. They literally were cars on the other side of my fence before we put the gravel in. The city, and we split the cost, actually. I hired someone to put the wood barrier to delineate where cars could park, and the city put the stones in. So that helped for about half the length of the property I have on Columbia, where our house is. But on the other half, it gets very narrow there. And what's going on, as you guys will recognize, that area is basically an auxiliary parking area for mostly Royal Farms. And any car going up Columbia towards Rehoboth Beach, I'd say about 10 a day. There could be a truck, it could be a cement truck. It doesn't matter what it is. They want to run in, get their cigarettes, get their chicken, get whatever they want from Royal Farms. And there's no parking in Royal Farms, mostly because there are delivery trucks there blocking everything. So they park there, and you have no idea how hazardous it is. If you have a pickup truck there, pedestrians who are crossing at Royal Farms cannot see what's going on in Columbia. Some of the pickup trucks, because they don't want to be in the road, they don't want to get a major ticket if they're caught, they park all the way onto my grass. I've tried planting grass there 2 or 3 times already to absolutely no avail. I was even told it's a fruitless thing to plant anything there because there's so many large trucks just parking there with their heat, killing anything that would grow. And so the city has helped. They drew a yellow line. I guess it cut from 20 cars doing that a day, maybe down to 10. So there is some compliance, but not a lot. But the reason I think that a curb would be great in that area is because the curb on the other side, but on the Royal Farm side, there's absolutely no infractions there. Nobody just parks by the curb, blocking half of Columbia. People don't do that, even if they want to get their cigarettes. So if you put a curb on my side, and it's only, I don't know, 30 feet. I drew the diagram there. I don't know how many exact feet. Just from where my parking area stops to the corner, you would get rid of 90% of the problem. You really would. And the major problem is the cars parking there, making it a very hazardous area. Then there's killing all my grass, and it looks horrible. The area looks absolutely horrible no matter what I do. I mean, it's a new house, but it looks like a wreck, that area, and there's nothing I could do about it, because as soon as I plant something, some truck lands on it. And it's a very frustrating thing. And the city has done, they've helped me to a point, and I was hoping it would work, but it doesn't work. But a curb would work, because I don't see anyone on the other side parking right in the middle of Columbia, blocking traffic. They won't do that. They know that's a no-no. Also, there's tremendous erosion there. So the curb would definitely control the erosion. The water would go right into the storm drain, which is right there. There's also a fire hydrant. And I'm talking mostly about the Royal Farms, because, most of the problem is due to people running into Royal Farms. But on the days of the farm market, it's like doubled or tripled the problem. You have people just dropping people off there. It's really a madhouse. And I think you guys all recognize that. And I think the curb would solve the problem. And at least that's all I could ask for you guys. I don't want a sidewalk. I just want a curb just from where the parking stops to the corner. And that, I think that would really help. And, I put my own money into the parking spots, but I really think a curb is not my business. I think the curb is the city business, because I didn't create this problem. This is a problem created by the lack of accessible parking for customers at Royal Farms. It is just no way the Royal Farms parking lot could handle all their business, given they have, how many trucks a day? 10 trucks a day that basically take up half their parking lot, and people don't want to park there because of the trucks, so they park right there where I am, and it creates a big hazard and destroys not only the city land, but a little bit of my own land. So that's why I'm requesting this curb. It's a long process. It started from 2018, and I tried to get the cheapest way to mitigate the problem, and it hasn't worked yet. So a curb would do the trick.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Jeffrey. I don't think anybody on the committee is against the idea of curbing. What, again, similar to putting in a crosswalk on the avenue, we don't have very much control. We have to have things approved by DelDOT, because that's their street, as well as Columbia Avenue and State Road. So it's those three. We would need to get permission from DelDOT to do something like that. And again,
excuse me, Pat. How did you? Kevin managed to put the 2 parking spots there without it. It didn't take long, and he suggested it. If I would put the wood barrier, he could put the gravel or stones, and that has really helped a lot. So how did that work?
So, well, I'll tell you, the gravel and stones, and I've lived on Henlopen Avenue where there's no curb, and I live now on Sussex Street where there is a curb. And on Henlopen Avenue, we pay put the stones down to have the parking area. So that's true on Columbia Avenue. As far as the length, you can go down Columbia Avenue, you'll see that there's a variety of different stones that people have paid for and put down for parking. And I will also tell you that when I built my house on Sussex Street, I paid for the curb. So, but of course that's a city street, and that's a little bit different situation, because you as a home, since there are no curbs on Columbia Avenue, you as a homeowner couldn't just decide to put a curb there. You can put stone there.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, the problem with putting stone there is, and it's so close to the drain that it could be problematic. And there is a curb on Columbia at Royal Farms, and I don't know who paid for that curb, but it's not just a curb; it's a sidewalk there.
Well, that
has really helped.
Yeah. The difference is you're residential and they're commercial. Yeah. That's a whole different deal.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd be willing to contribute. I mean, depending what it costs, but you know, I can't by myself put a curb in there.
Yeah, no.
So
I
that's why I'm requesting
understand.
you guys.
We're not asking you to pay for it because,
Okay, good.
no, we're not asking you to pay for it. DelDOT has to determine that they would pay for it. Or if they didn't want to pay for it, they could say, yeah, that's fine with us, but city, you have to pay for it. So those are the options, okay?
Right. Okay, well, I'm requesting that you guys do whatever you can to make that happen because the problem is not going to go away by itself. And it is a hazard and it's caused by, as I said, by the business across the street, by people parking there, and by the farmers market on when the farmers market is open. The parking problem is not something I create by parking my car there. It's a city problem, and I hope the city would help me try to solve it. That's
Right,
why
no, we
I'm requesting.
understand, and I got agreement from the committee members here that something does need to be done, so.
Thank you.
We'll move forward with, Chief, I don't know if that's, so, I mean, we could put that on our agenda too for when we meet with DelDOT. So you can just maybe, talk to them about that issue as well, perhaps.
Right, and Commissioner, just my suggestion, maybe it gets brought up under your report to the mayor and commissioners so they can, I don't know if it's official vote or just discussion at the workshop. And then if so, what normally would happen on that, and I don't want to, hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, but I believe the city manager would then be asked if you guys as a body decide to move forward, would be to ask Sharon, the city manager, to have Kevin Williams contact DelDOT and do an assessment in that area. So
Okay.
I don't know if I don't know if that would.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'll put it in my report. There's the consensus is amongst us all. I don't think there's any disagreement here about the potential for putting some sort of curbing there. So I'll bring it up. I'll actually do a report, not just a written report, but I'll present it at the next commissioners meeting.
Yeah, thank you. I think that just would streamline it, and so everybody agrees, if the committee or the board decides to move forward, the city manager would just instruct Kevin to get moving on it.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Jeffrey, you have any other questions?
Hello? Yes, hi. Yes, I really appreciate you guys are trying to help me out here. And I also like some of the ideas for temporary redress until you could decide about when the curb could be put in. Like, I don't know the best, but bicycle racks or even even those barriers, those barriers I mentioned, just about anything would be better than it is now. So if you could consider a temporary thing until something better could be done, that would be great too. So
Okay.
if you could look into that, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I will put that in my report for discussion with the.
Yeah. Could I just comment?
Thank you all.
I think on those temporary barriers, I wouldn't do a bicycle rack because of the a fire hydrant.
Okay.
I just mentioned those things, Don, as what we have in inventory to work with that would be easy to implement.
Right.
It's not necessarily the best choice, but we could, if we have it available.
Right. I think
we can use what we've got, and it's free, basically.
Exactly. Oh, I think that's an
And
excellent
it's
idea.
it's a mile away.
It's an excellent idea to use temporary barriers, but I think those temporary barriers have to be selected and with the fire hydrant in mind, I'd say.
Yes, that's true. Okay. All right. Thank you. And let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is discuss the possibility of requesting funding from the city to design a streetscape on King Charles Avenue to accommodate crosswalks and bicyclists. As you know, in the very beginning of when we first when I first became chair, this was one of the items that you all had talked about in the past. And what we learned and what I never realized was the street was actually too wide to have a crosswalk there without something in the middle, like a median. So in my riding bicycles recently, one of the things that I found going on Junction Breakwater, and I've actually knew this from before, it's been there quite a while, but in the Hawkeye development, they have a median going down the street that's a bicycle path. Now their street is not nearly as wide as even in King Charles. So I'm thinking the potential is there for a bicycle, an actual, an actual off-street bicycle path and median with potentially trees, because that would be more ideal to have that as well. I think there's plenty of a width there, but we would need to have someone to do a design for us. This is a city street, so we would have to request the commissioners, we would request a budget item, a line item to do this project. And I think it would be a valuable project. So I know that.
What's the status on changing the parking on King Charles? They talked about making it slanted.
I don't know that anything happened with that, but I will tell you that many people who live on that street were adamantly opposed. Adamantly opposed to
It is a city, and by definition, it's an urban area, and there is slanted parking further down that street.
Yeah.
And to me, it's inevitable, because that's revenue generation for the city of Rehoboth Beach.
Sure.
Doubling the number of parking spaces there is, to me, vastly preferable to this mission to build a parking garage, which seems to have gone completely to sleep.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, but also the median that you're talking about wouldn't preclude, I mean, it's not dependent upon those parking spaces being angle or parallel, right?
And there's the question that I had, unfortunately, Kevin's not here, but I recall that Kevin said, given the width of the street, that you need to have a landing area for people.
Right.
So,
no problem.
and perhaps Chief Banks knows, could that landing area be paint, or does it have to be a physically elevated or separated curb structure to protect the pedestrian in the middle of the street? Because if it could be done with paint, then bike lanes / pedestrian space landing area could be done pretty inexpensively.
My understanding that anytime you're done with that and start putting a crosswalk in, changing that up, you have to make sure everything's ADA compliant. So therefore, you'd have to have some kind of, in the middle, it wouldn't just be paint. You'd have to make sure that once somebody stopped in the lane and a disability that knows to walk across safely.
So paint to me is completely level and flat.
Yeah, right.
Correct, but if you're stopping, people have to know where the stopping points. Take somebody that is seeing impaired.
Right.
They have to know where they would stop in the middle.
So you'd have to have the pebble grain.
That's
surface.
my understanding. Again, that's somewhere in Kevin's area of expertise. But
right. There's a term that I forget about those round discs. Yeah. So it would at least require those to be embedded in the pavement at every crosswalk area.
Correct.
Because we were always confused on the committee as to why it was agreed that we would get crosswalks painted, and then it never happened. So now it's becoming a lot clearer.
Well, and honestly, I think to order to make it completely safe, it would be nice, in my opinion. I mean, I think to make an investment on that street, and it would be lovely. I can tell you that the mayor is very much in favor of not having heat islands, and having trees in the middle would be wonderful.
I love the way they did it at Hawkeye. I think it's a great model.
I do too. Anybody else seen that? I'm sure Dave.
Oh yeah,
I've seen it a few hundred times, but it never ceases to amaze me the number of people that still ride their bicycles on the asphalt.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just
Right.
Well, you know,
mind-boggling.
the
I-
Well,
the difference being that it's very, that's not a crowded street.
No, it's not. And I've always wanted to do everything I could to make sure that the citizens of Hawkeseye view cyclists favorably. And one of the things is to always ride on the concrete and not on the asphalt. And the other thing is the asphalt's always hotter. So
Right.
it's kind of like, whatever, I don't really get it, but I have to be able to do that in under a minute. That's my goal right now.
yeah.
So the question in front of the committee is whether to recommend to the commissioners that a study be funded to put this forward. And
Yes,
I'm certainly
money.
in favor of that. And I don't want to borrow somebody else's phrase, paint us all into corners in what the design would actually wind up looking like. That said, the more it favors establishment of a treescape in particular, that's something that I would really, really like to see them focus on. The more I hear discussion around bikeways and pedestrian ways, that may limit the amount of actual green turf that might be available, and that's okay, because I think there would be ways of creating space for trees. And another design concept around trees is that center island, should there be one on King Charles, would be one of the few remaining places in the city where one would be able to place what most people would call a standard size American shade tree. You could put a sycamore there. You could put a walnut there. You could put an oak there. And or you could put a pine. We're losing all our pine trees.
Yeah.
Well, I want to remind everybody of the Greenways study that we had done a few years ago. Greenways recommended a bike lane right up the middle of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know why we couldn't have a bike lane and the boulevard you're talking about.
Right. That's exactly what we're talking about, John.
Right.
You're right in line. And Donna, you've been trying to say something for about.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a very different take on it.
Okay.
If I ever supported more crosswalks on King Charles, I retract that. I really think that street's okay. I don't think there's really problems there. I don't think we need more crosswalks for folks. And the other thing is, the main thing is, as a bicyclist and driving around town, I appreciate getting over to King Charles where there's breathing room. There is space for everybody to get around each other. And I don't like the idea of narrowing our streets and taking away that space. And I think that makes it all more dangerous. And I can't envision a bike lane down the center, because you have to eventually get off. Like, when you hit Laurel in Philadelphia, that's got to end. And that would be confusing with the traffic there. So,
Well,
but
take a look at the Greenway study.
Yeah, really.
well, I don't recall that. I didn't remember that or seeing that, but I think what I would recommend doing is just letting it go. I think we want to see how the city and people react to what happened on the Lake Street area there by Girard, where the lanes were narrowed. I think we have to see how people feel about that narrowing. I think see how that worked.
I think what you're missing here, in my opinion, is the width of King Charles is it's huge. The width of it is very, very big. I think you could easily, well, I don't know how.
I know, Pat, and that's what's nice about it. Leave the width. Just, leave the width when people are in those Surrey bikes. Leave the width when people are going back and forth to the beach. Leave the width when families want to bicycle together in town. Just leave that for breathing room. We don't have that in town. I'm just opposed to making it worse. And I think David's right. There's a good chance that they'll have to expand the parking on King Charles. And that'll cut into any width of space that could be for a greenway. I don't, and I cross there at Hickman all the time. I'm always crossing King Charles. And, I look down the street, there's not an issue for people further down the street there at King Charles.
It's an ADA issue. An ADA.
Well, even, space gives handicapped people a benefit. It's, they don't need to be crowded and worried about working around bicyclists and cars. So,
But there's no crosswalk for them to go across. If they're
well,
down beyond.
yeah.
A lot of people go in that direction and would want a crosswalk. I've heard this for several years now. That a lot of
It's
people
it's
go-
going back a long ways.
Traffic there, it's,
And the other issue there is that people that, because it's so open, the speed, you
Right.
can't, that's an issue. People go
Yeah.
quite fast.
but it's a short run and they have to slow down at the Silver Lake when they're going to make that turn.
That's a long way.
Yes,
Well,
it
no,
is.
Didn't
well,
Keith,
people can't judge
Chief
it. There's
Banks, didn't you do a speed survey along there a while ago, 2-3 years ago? And it wasn't out
yeah,
of
we-
line?
Yes, and I don't have that data right in front of me. I could try to pull that up and I could try to do a new, more recent
Interesting.
one. Currently, we have the system over on Columbia Avenue doing some surveys over there, but we could put it next on King Charles.
I recall that the excessive speed was not objectionable, but it could be back in our data from, again, it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think you're that is an accurate statement, but I can get a updated information to the committee, so it's more reliable at this point.
So Donna, getting back to your position, your consideration is for bike lanes on the outside next to the parked cars as opposed to down the middle of the street.
Yeah, I can't envision that.
Okay, so there's a couple
Just
different ways it could either way, if we have the opportunity, because again, I'm learning new terms here about American Rescue Plan and shovel ready. If there's an opportunity to improve the appearance of that street and add green space, it might not be a bad thing.
I want to add something based on like the width of the street or the fact that, the sort of traffic calming aspect of putting in like a median. And it's a personal experience that I just had this past week. And I recognize the fact that I don't want to overgeneralize, but it was significant to me when it happened. And that is, as much as I like, so I'm going to make a comparison between the crosswalks on Rehoboth Avenue and the new Lake Avenue streetscape. So as much as I like the flashing lights and everything on Rehoboth Avenue, I can tell you it's extremely frustrating to see how often people ignore them. I mean, it's just incredible to me. Now I have heard the light has something to do with that the sunlight, makes those flashing lights difficult to see. I have heard that. I can see them fine, but maybe depending on the time of day or the light, that is a factor. But nevertheless, Rehoboth Avenue is a speedy street, so there are people that are just ignoring them, right and left. It's rather scary. I was actually in the middle of the crosswalk the other day when somebody comes flying through. So, yeah.
It's pretty consistent.
Yeah. So by contrast, I happened to be walking home the other day from over on like 3rd, and I was on that side of the road near the garden, crossing over to the breakers. And I'll be the first to tell you that I agree with a lot of other people who've looked at the streetscape design after the fact and sort of scratched their head thinking, what, it seems a little narrow for cars turning out. It's potentially problematic for cyclists. I get that. I can certainly, until the plantings go in, I think we're all going to be scratching our heads wondering what kind of shape is this? But from a pedestrian perspective, I stopped there at the corner and there was a car coming along and he rolled to a very gentle stop. And then there's no signage, I don't think, anyway, it's just the crosswalk. And I crossed right over it. The point was he wasn't going very fast to begin with. So it was very easy for him to coast to a stop and for me to, and I got the sense in that moment of the traffic calming capability of something like this. And I don't think we should ignore that. I also think that the bike lane potentially on King Charles being in the middle instead of behind the cars is also safer. So I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, I've crossed there just like Donna many, many times, hundreds of times going to the beach. And I think the only thing that saves people is that the drivers are kind and they slow down when they see people in the middle of the street. But they don't really need to. I mean, there's no crosswalk.
Right.
So we should put a crosswalk.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, if you are crossing, then there's no crosswalk. I guess you're jaywalking.
Yes.
Well, we'd have to defer to the police department to get an answer on that one. Chief Banks, is that the case?
If someone's in the middle of the street crossing or whatever, you should be using a crosswalk if there's not one. But the reality is we're not going to cite anybody for jaywalking. You have to cross the street. And if there's no crosswalks, they're going across. You get in common sense, but it really is not jaywalking if you don't have any crosswalks anywhere in the near vicinity.
Yeah, it's just farther north on King Charles. But
Right.
let me
So
throw
Chief,
this.
does that mean I'm off the hook when I cross in front of Starbucks?
No.
The cameras are there looking for you now.
That's right. Hey, so think about this one. And John, this is your street. You know, Scarborough has a median in the middle,
It's a beautiful
Yeah.
street.
and it's a lovely street. I love that street.
Right.
We do too.
For that particular reason, because I feel it's like more green. It just feels good.
Yes.
And that's part of my comment earlier, that as the city loses more small houses, and as you lose small houses, you lose big trees. That's just the way things are going. If we can plan in advance to take advantage of opportunities to create green space where it doesn't currently exist, such as by creating a median in the middle of King Charles, that's a partial solution to a growing long-term problem.
Well, here, but as a bicyclist, I mean, I live near Scarborough and I love it too. And I think it's a very attractive, nice, but when I'm biking home along Scarborough, it's tight.
Yeah,
It's very tight.
It's very tight.
And it's hard to have a parked car, a bike, and a traveling car.
But the width of
You
Scarborough,
can't.
you know this, Don, if you cross King Charles a lot, the difference between the width of Scarborough and King Charles is significant.
Yes.
And we're talking about putting a bike lane down the middle, so this is not something you'd have to even worry about.
Well, I guess I think I need to have a tape measure because I think it's hard to visualize how wide they are because they're different environments, you know.
Maybe Santa Claus can come visit you early this year.
Bring me a tape measure.
Yeah, or one of the laser ones. It's a lot easier to work with.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that there might be a happy median here where there's
That's what people want, a happy
a median down the middle with treescape and bike lanes on the outside that would keep Donna happy. That's, to me, the Lake Avenue one is a choke point. It's traffic calming to the extreme.
Yeah.
I've lived through the traffic calming evolution in Arlington, Virginia, and Falls Church, Virginia, and Fairfax, Virginia. And the bump outs unfortunately impede the cyclists. So they do a job of creating a narrow view for the motorist, but they don't take into account, they just don't take into account the cyclists. I just found one that I've got to send Kevin where they did a bump out that's split. So there's a bike lane and a pedestrian landing both on Brookville Road and Silver Spring. So it appears as though that's evolving to be more bicycle friendly. My feeling was that the traffic calming evolved to be a little too extreme and didn't take account into people on two wheels. And those numbers have grown, the people on bicycles have grown astronomically in the past year and a half, astronomical. So
Yeah.
maybe there's a way to do everything and keep everybody happy. But certainly that street has potential. And once Chief Banks mentioned the visually impaired, which I didn't really think about, you've got to have the feel there. It's not just flat. It's got to have feel.
Mhm.
So there might then if you have that becomes rumble strips for the cyclists who would be better off next to the parked cars on the outside.
Well, I think those rumble strips shouldn't be that big of a deal for a bicyclist, frankly.
Right, right.
Compared to the washouts and large chunks of gravel, yes.
Right.
And
That could be problematic. Well,
Yes.
building on what David said about, you have to think of cars and pedestrians and cyclists. And I think here in Rehoboth, we're getting more and more crowded. We're bringing in more and more cars, more and more bicyclists, more and more pedestrians. And so to me, the goal is to keep traffic moving smoothly. And if you take pavement away, if you take area away, you're boxing people in, you're slowing down traffic, you're creating jams, and that backfires on us. We can't accommodate all the people in town. So and we need to keep traffic flowing, both cars and bicyclists. And
hey, Pat,
Miles an hour. So
this is a 5-minute warning. 5-minute warning.
Okay, well, so the speed limit in town is 25 miles an hour anyway, and it shouldn't be above that.
Yes.
Oh, I see that people on State Road go faster. People on King Charles go faster than that. In any case, I still think this is what I will do before the next meeting is I will do my own mock-up. I am not a designer, of course, but just based on things that I've seen and ideas, I'll put something together that gives us some ideas in terms of the width of the street and lanes and what could be accommodated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll put a straw man together for everyone to see, Donna. And
I'm going to be a hard sell, as you can tell, Pat.
I know. But I will do that. So, yeah. What else? So
I just want to make one comment on, and Kevin's not on the call, but we're still experiencing trouble with the cyclists coming in on the new bi-directional bike lanes across the Canal Bridge.
Really?
And they're rolling right through the cones and sign that Kevin had put up on short notice. So that's still a problem. So I would like to.
Problem though. I mean, it says what it shows the bicycle.
It's just, I'm just waiting for head-on crashes, and
oh, I know.
it's so sad. But anyway, that's something that I would like to see we discuss next time.
What are you trying to say? Are they outside the back bike lanes?
Well, no, they're not outside the bike lanes, but the new bi-directional lanes on the north side of Rehoboth Avenue extended come across the Canal Bridge, and then a cyclist traveling east should exit the bike lane and go behind the museum and potentially around behind Grove Park on the bike path.
Right.
But cyclists are not turning left. They're continuing to go straight. They get to the entrance to the museum parking lot in front of the visitor center, and then all of a sudden realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong side of the road. I'm going in the wrong direction. And so they turn left into the parking lot where people are trying to come out, because that parking lot's fairly active this time of year, particularly on Tuesdays. So I don't know what we do there. And it to the extreme would be someone to flag people down and say, hey, you're putting yourself at risk. But I guess people don't look down. I'm trying to figure it out, because those two cones are pretty bright. The sign's pretty big. It seems pretty evident.
So
it's not working.
It's not on our agenda right now to talk about it.
No, that's something I want to get on next time.
I will put it on next time. What about
Something to bring up with DelDOT, another thing for DelDOT.
They seem to have washed their hands on the thing right now. It's kind of weird.
Well, I tomorrow is a
grand opening.
the ribbon cutting. So
yeah,
I will talk with someone from DelDOT about that, since I'll be going to that. So let's talk about any other items for the agenda for next time.
Well, I just want to get an update. You and I talked about this before the meeting, and I don't know, an update on the Sharrows and the timing and all that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Kevin's not here. What Kevin told me, and I will call him. And Chief, if you can, you may know something more than I do. But what was said last time was they were updating the paint on the crosswalks first, and they were going to do the Sharrows. But I thought they were going to try to get all this done by Memorial Day, and we're way past that. So, Chief?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. It is Bill Murphy from the sign shop that's doing it. Him and his, I think he has two other guys. They have a list. They're working through the list. They are well behind. I know the city manager asked, had to add a few more things to the list, and we made sure the shows and all stayed at the top. So ours is just going to come probably after the season now and all. But I know there's a long list or whatever that's been added from the city, and yeah, they're working through it. So he is behind on that. It is at the top of the list. So I don't want to speak for him and his crew, how close or how soon they're going to start that. But it should be getting close. And I just say that because some other items that we had to get done to city has been pushed down underneath that. So I know that's still staying at the top.
Well, what I will tell everybody, that you probably don't know, but we're down like 9 people in the streets department. And that's why some of this stuff isn't getting done.
Whoa.
How come, Pat? How come we're down?
Labor shortages everywhere.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. People just aren't applying for the jobs here.
I mean, a lot of retirements. I mean, the street people are usually long-term hires, right? They weren't laid off during the pandemic, were they? I mean, they would have, they just a whole,
like Chief, like our summer officers, we can have what, as many as 28? Is that right, Chief?
28.
Yes, 28.
And we have 13.
Oh, we're down to 13 now. We lost one.
Yes. Yes, parking's down. As far as to answer your question, Donna, there was some retirements in that department recently, and as well as some other public works areas. And also they have been actively hiring or trying to hire, quite frankly, just receiving applications, and there's summer help that they're trying to hire too, and just not getting applications and all. So, and some of it's due to pay. But that's another discussion somewhere else. But yes, all departments are down for the summer.
they're finding better paying jobs someplace. Is that it? They're finding better paying jobs and moving on?
For a variety of reasons. But
There are a lot of reasons, Donna. It varies, but I think what we need to do, and my wife and I have been doing it at every opportunity, is thank the seasonal officers for being here and how much we appreciate their being here, because they all took a lot of heat last summer from a lot of people.
Good idea.
It was not a pleasant environment for them. So every time I have a chance to make eye contact and approach, thank you. We really appreciate that you're here. Have a great summer.
Right.
Because we want the word to get out what a nice community it is, and have more people come back next year and tell their friends how great it was to have a summer at the beach.
Okay, let's see.
So for the next meeting, could we also talk about the height of the wayfinding signs that Merge put in for cyclists?
Yeah, I'll put that on.
And then also bike route signs at the gateway on the canal bridge to get people to turn right and come down my street and go by my house instead of going up Rehoboth Avenue.
Next week, next meeting, we're going to be live. We're going to be in the commission. So we'll have more. Okay.
That sounds great.
So we need to pick a time, a date. Let's see.
Well, the second Thursday would be the 8th, although I'm not here then, I don't think. I think I'm out both the 8th and 9th. I got to change the tree meeting because of that. But
We'll do the 15th.
Yeah, I'll be around the 15th.
How's everybody else for the 15th?
15th is good here.
I don't have my appointment book. The 15th, July 15th. Oh, and what day of the week is that? What are we talking about?
Thursday.
Okay.
Our next
Thursday
meeting.
again?
What
Okay.
time will it be? I have one meeting that day.
What time are you shooting for it? 10 or 2?
What time is your meeting, John?
1:30.
So maybe 10 is better.
At 10 a.m., which is what we've been doing, has been the morning.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
Yeah, I would not be able to be there.
Are mornings bad for you or what?
That particular morning, I have an appointment upstate. So I would not be available in the morning on the 15th. I would be available in the afternoon.
Okay, and John, you have a 1:30 on Thursday.
Yeah.
So what about the following Thursday, the 20?
22nd, that's good.
It's okay.
That works.
I think it's
10 o'clock.
good.
John, is that all right with you?
I think
Yes.
so.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right, let's do July 22nd at 10 a.m.
Okay, at City
At
Hall.
City Hall.
at City Hall,
Okay.
okay?
Commissioner,
Yes,
if I may add, if you're gonna just put on the agenda, talk about height of wayfinding signs, you may want to see if Evan Miller is available to attend that meeting since he's kind of overseeing wayfinding sign project.
okay,
Yeah, Chief, what I noticed there is that they're all at 8 feet, and if you're on a bicycle, 8 feet's way too high.
okay.
I don't see anything else on the city calendar at all that day, so it looks like we should be okay. I mean,
All right.
Okay.
Very good. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. There's
Okay.
nothing,
Oh, one more thing, Pat, about, we got the crossing markers at Canal and Hickman, but we still don't have them at Grove to Munson going across State Road. That's probably a Kevin thing, but we
yeah,
have them at one of the two intersections, but not both.
Grove and, isn't that weird? Grove and Munson.
Yeah, where Grove crosses State Road, it transitions to Munson Street.
oh, that's where a new crosswalk was going in and everything?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
where the
nothing has happened there. Do we know what's going on?
schedule, but it's not scheduled till the end of the season. to
Okay,
have done.
okay,
Yeah, that's a new crosswalk. It's been funded.
okay, good.
Right.
So we're gonna take that off the list.
Yeah, yep.
Good.
All right,
All right, thank
Hey.
you all.
okay,
Okay, see you next month.
okay, Donna.
Yes.